little sense of what it was like, what you felt like before the boycott when you had to ride the buses.
Oh, before the boycott, riding the buses, to me, was, we just really felt like second-class citizens, I'd say that, because it made us feel so, and harassments that we received. There have been numerous of times that I have tried to board the bus, especially during the Friday and Saturdays when the rush was so many people in town at that particular time. And we couldn't enter the front door. We always had to be, after so many would get on in the front, and they had the side seats, and the first 4 or 5 seats was for whites only. And therefore, when those people got to that distance on the bus, then they would start just like we were a bunch of cows, cattle, anything, and letting us get in from the side, the rear door. And after it was filled to capacity, then they would you have already paid your money at the front door, but you just had to get on the bus, or either they just go on leaving. You're standing there, and whether you had another bus fare or not, you were just stranded. And so naturally, with anybody, they felt very harassed about it, and you couldn't do anything about it. And then there have been times that I have been insulted highly on the bus. I remember I had a babysitting job out in the white area, and so many mornings and getting on the bus when we'd get downtown where I'd have to transfer to the bus. This was in 1948. I can remember it very much when I just really had it out with the bus driver on the bus. I refused to move then. He said to me, there wasn't anyone on the bus, about 3 or 4 white women got on the bus, they worked at the state capitol and where we were transferring to down there. All the people just standing up, so many of them were standing up and just pushed together, just like so many times some people's pocketbook would be clipped, their groceries would be taken off the bus when other people would get off, because it was so crowded you couldn't attend to the things that you really had to do. And this particular morning, it wasn't that many on the bus, white people. As I say, there was that whole front area up there. One of them, if I can remember, there were 2 white women on the bus at that time. And there were 10 or 12 available seats for us to sit. But it was just so crowded, so very crowded, until we was just like sardines, I would say. And so this motorman told me I was sitting where the signs start, colored and white. And I was sitting right in that area on that seat, and he told me I still was violating the law. I said, well, if I'm violating the law, it's just going to be violated this morning because I'm not going to move. I said, now all those seats are vacant, and we just had it, and he got up, and at that particular time, I think Truman, it was in 48, and so Truman had talked about, civil rights was kind of coming in, and he started bringing that up, what you think this, you'll never reach it here and that. And I refused to get up, and I told him that if I had to get up, I would get off, and then I would call the people that I had to go to and let them know maybe they could do something about it since we couldn't. I never was a coward, but I just tried to obey the rules and regulations of our city.
How would you be able to handle a situation like that? And also, don't forget to give this video a like.
Government on things like that. So naturally, I was harassed so many times until if I'd had the money at that time, we weren't getting anything for our labor, so we just couldn't hardly always afford taxis. So I think that we had a very, very good reason to boycott the buses. And I feel that's the reason we did as much as we could, and we felt as good as we could, after we did boycott, because we were highly mistreated here on the buses. And I have seen them really strike men. Sometimes it would frighten you because you don't know what would happen. Some of them's temper would grow up. They couldn't do that now. I have seen them just eject one man, slapped him, and then pulled him off the bus because he was standing close to a white, in the area where the white people were. He couldn't move back. That's what was so very bad. He said, I can't get back, because all the rest of them was just, pushing, and they couldn't get back. And then I have seen colored women beat up white men on the bus. One particular morning, that same area, she stepped up on.
Can you just hold on that? Okay. talking about, where the black women would sometimes beat up?
Oh, yes, it would be so. I mean, I guess they were tired, and they know they were going to work. And probably this man had worked all night somewhere downtown. And when she got on the bus, she stepped up on the bus. They didn't even want you to get on to board the bus ahead of them. And when she stepped up to get on the bus, he had little enough sense to pull her back off. You see, and when she did, he got on. He succeeded in getting on before her. But when she got on, she had her umbrella and she whammed him every way she could. And the bus driver, he looked around, but he saw the anger, it's on her face. So he just didn't say anything in this particular incident. Well, we all laughed. That was just about 2 or 3 days after I had been so asked to move, and I refused to move, from that particular seat that morning. So we'd always say, well, now, I guess he got it back for how they had treated this poor colored man that one Saturday, that they beat him and made him get off the bus because he couldn't move. He couldn't get out the way of that little bunch of white people, and he'd been working hard all day. And I really felt sorry for him. And it's really that if this thing hadn't have happened, I don't believe that we could have just went on as much. In this particular bus that's in this area, this is the Washington Park area, and this is the bus where we had so many problems because so many people ride. And then if you're going into that detail, after the bus boycott was over, well, that particular morning, when they asked us to stay off the bus, they said there was just one black woman that rode the bus. And I mean for at least 6 weeks, 2 or 3 months, I don't know what it was, those buses drove without anybody on them. And they couldn't absolutely stay in business with the white people that was on it. And then I think it might have frightened some of the white people that was riding not to ride it because they didn't know whether they would be harassed or what would happen to them, riding through this particular area, and a few that were once living in this particular area at that time. So they just had to absolutely close down the bus. We kept it shut down until, I think, for at least 10 months.
Did you think the black folks would really carry it through? Did you think they'd actually boycott him?
No, I didn't to start with, but that morning when they didn't, I think this was an incentive for so many people to be at that first mass meeting because that bus went totally without. I didn't see any. They rolled by, and that particular morning I was up. I just decided I would get up because the bus passed right down in front of my house, and I got up to see it, and several buses passed. I was late for work because I was trying to see how many buses was empty, and they were totally empty. That particular woman that rode the bus, I think she rode the Cleveland Avenue bus, which was in another area, and they say she rode it for a while until she was harassed quite a bit about riding it. But we, right away, people started sending money from everywhere, and our church was one church that had a station wagon, and they had a regular setup at Alabama State College. Dr. Sims was over there, I believe, over this dispatching. And we would have dispatchers here in the morning in our church, and some of the other churches would dispatch those rides, and they'd stay downtown. And they were giving you tickets for everything, traffic officers and all. It was easy to get a ticket, then you didn't have to violate no law, but we just stayed, and so many people walked. And that particular time, I had just had some dental work done the Saturday before, and I walked from this church downtown. I had to go several times to the dentist because I was having quite a bit of extractions and dental work done. So I'd get out there and walk to town. Cold day. Well, just think from here, I guess it's 3 or 4 miles. But I'd walk down there, I'd walk back. And then if I got a chance to see, if you could catch a ride from here in the morning, but most they were dispatching those people. People didn't lose their jobs. And it was surprising at how many white people really came and picked up their maids, But those that were working and had to depend on that and didn't have transportation, there were at least 9, I think, or 10 churches that had buses. These station wagons. And they were very good about getting people back and forth to work, in all areas.
What was that first mass meeting like?
Oh, I don't know. I can't hardly describe. We were in meeting here. As I say, I was secretary of the church then. And on the Monday after first Sunday, we always have our general mission meeting, and we were downstairs, and we didn't know it was going to be nothing like that. And pretty soon they just started coming in from every direction. All the chairs that we had in the church like this, we were setting them up everywhere. The balcony was full. And they asked us, we had a sound system that went all over the church. And we told some people they could go up in the educational building upstairs there, and all, we didn't have this part of it, but all downstairs where the nursery school is, it was filled to capacity. And then it was filled to capacity on the streets. We had to have the streets blocked off because there wasn't anything. They called here and told us to cut off the loudspeaker. We turned on the loudspeaker, we could go on outside. And it was a bitter cold night. It was one of the coldest nights that we had, if I can remember so clear. And I was the one that was forced on the outside. There wasn't nobody on the inside. I was in there, and I just didn't know it was going to, have a magnitude to what it did. And so I called myself going home because my children were very young yet, and I didn't want to stay away from them. But when I saw the excitement, I just fell right in. And this church carried that mass meeting like that for several weeks. And then we started going to other larger churches here, but it was just surprising as many. And we were really, at that particular time, we were harassed. The White Citizens Council that they had at that time was called here so numerous times through the day, and I wouldn't repeat some of the insulting words they'd say to us, We had to be strong, because...
Why do you think people maintained it? Why did black folks sustain the boycott all that time?
Well, I guess it was time, and then as I say, if you were harassed as much as that, and all of us felt the treatments of our power structure here, until it was easy for me. And I don't know about anybody else, but I feel that I voiced the sentiment of them too, because I just felt that I was doing it for one of the greatest causes. I just had faith enough to know that before it was ended, we were going to enjoy some freedom of riding where we could. Sitting where we could on the buses. And I feel like every person, especially at that time, I was kind of middle-aged. It wasn't even middle-aged, but I'm saying that I had some little ones there, and I'm just so glad when they got grown, then they were able to enjoy more freedom than we were. It's such a thing as just making footprints on the sand in time, and I think this is what this boycott did. I really do. I think that it had a great impact on our society.
And what was that last, when you found out that you won, what did you feel like?
Oh boy, the elation that morning. When I read it in the paper that we had won, and the next morning those buses was rolling. Dr. King, I think Reverend Wilson, and all of them, they went downtown. They rode the bus. They headed, getting on the bus. And we just felt so very good. The first time I got on there, I don't like those side seats. And I tell you another thing that they had learned. They put the most segregated-minded bus drivers out. They were so poor, and they went through so much, I guess, poverty during the time that they weren't, riding the bus. They weren't bus drivers, and they had no other alternative. So some of those same drivers that harassed us so much, they got their jobs back. And they put all those hard, poor, segregationists in the predominantly black areas. At that time, it was none but black areas. And they had to take it. And the one that harassed me so much, I almost wanted to sit up. I sat so close to him on the bus till I was leaning over. If he'd have leaned back this way, he probably would have touched me. I did that because I was just so elated. And we encouraged all of us. I said, now don't go to the back seat. Sit up on the front seat, If any of them come in and they don't want to sit by, let them stand, We weren't doing it out of any trying to just get back. But we appreciated being what the federal government did for us. And we had struggled and stayed together throughout. And walked in rain, and it was a hard winter, too. We really struggled. That was a hard, cold winter, if I remember. Those 3 or 4 months of it. And in the summertime, it was equally as hot. And so, this started in December the 5th, 1955. And I don't know exactly when it ended, but It was over a year when we first got in there. I can't get the date for that, but I will always remember the date that it got started, right here. And I was so elated if I could have gotten Pennsylvania Wilson let me be off all day. I'd have rode the bus all day long. That was just how elated I was.
I want to thank you.
All right.
That is very nice.
Who would you like for me to do a video on next? What are your thoughts about this video? Please share them in the comments. Please be honest when answering these questions. Share this video with anyone you deem necessary. And don't forget to like and subscribe to the channel.